Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Story Darlings podcast. I'm Sandra.
And I'm Tera.
What are we talking about today, Tera?
We are talking about the end of the Throne of Glass series. So part 2, A Kingdom of Ash. And it's a large book, guys. A very large book. And a lot happens in the second part.
A lot happens, and it's a lot of battle, and then waiting between, strategizing about battle. So,
and
yeah,
as we learned in the last part, a lot of these battles are happening outside of each other, so it's hard to keep track which battle what happened in. So if we mess it up, sorry guys, there's a lot of battles.
It is the finale to this series, so I was so curious to see what Tera would think, because I feel like the series ends so differently from how it began. Like the scope was so small way back in Throne of Glass and the Assassin's Blade, and you didn't really know where it was going. And then by the end of this book, you're just like, whoa, there's some really interesting things that happen, and we'll talk more about them later. But so part 2 opens, and we finally get back to our story with Dorian, who has been practicing his shape-shifting power, and he has been flying to Morath. As you remember, he left Manon and the 13 behind and decided to go forward and see if he could steal the final word key from Erewhon himself. So he is in the form of a crow, trying to blend in with these other crows, just flying around, trying to dodge these, like if there's witches or wyverns on parole and stuff. He's just trying to sneak past everything. And one of the cool things to me was when you're in his perspective, he's looking down at all of the destruction of Morath and thinking about Kaltain, how she did this. And it was just this awe-inspiring moment. So that was like a little good nod back to her that I appreciated from him.
Well, and he starts thinking about her as more than what he knew in the kingdom, too. Like, more as a person, instead of the flighty little, girl that was after him.
Yeah, little court games and such.
We find out that he had taken the 2 word keys with him, but he buried them, which I was like, oh no, that's dangerous. Something's going to happen in those freaking word keys while he's gone. My anxiety kicked up a lot during that, but we're okay, guys.
If it was me that buried them, I would have forgotten where they were. Like, whoops, no one's going to ever see those things again. Gone forever.
And I'm not great at keeping a secret. So, I have 0 poker face. 0. So, when people ask me where they were, I'd be like, I don't know.
This goes back to Tera's resting bitch face.
I don't know if I have a resting bitch face. I think I do, but also, I don't think it's, meant to be a resting bitch face. It's just, I don't know. I'm not bitchy most times, I guess.
Maybe we should take a poll, attach one to the Spotify episode. Let us know if you think Tera has a resting bitch face.
I'm a nice person, really, guys.
She is. She's a sweetie. My little Taurus.
Although Taurus and Cancers can be a little feisty, too. Just depends on how you get us, so.
I'll say 2 of my besties are Tauruses. It's like you and Tessa. Tera and Tessa are Tauruses.
And then you got an Aries thrown in there too, with David. We all have very similar, personalities, though. With, we're nice people until you test us, and then...
You're dead to me.
We're not nice. So.
Yeah.
Which is weird that we get along so well, because typically if you're alike, you don't get along very well, I would think. Although, I don't know.
We had our moments, growing up, it's just the adolescent stuff that you grow out of. It just took time and growing up, but yes. Anyway, now that everyone's gotten the download on our astrological signs,
we're helpful.
This is the content that you came for. Anyways, back to Morath. So Dorian flew in as a crow, saw Kaltain's damage, and then he turns into a rat. And he's like just creeping around the corridors, watching his back. And he finds Erewhon's council chamber. And who does he find, Tara?
Maeve is there. So he finds Maeve, and I found it really like funny that Maeve caught on to who he was very, very quickly and called him out. But yes, Maeve is there, and while he's in the room with Erewhon, Maeve lets him like just chill and listen to everything, and nobles are refusing to kneel, and like there's no longer like a neutral with Maeve. Like everybody has turned against her, which is why she is in Morath. She is trying to build herself back up and like keep herself safe because she no longer has the Fae. She does still have the healers that she has been keeping like enslaved to her, though. And the Caring Queen, like they're still on her
Mhm.
side. But otherwise she has no more backing.
Yeah, this was a little bit of the conversation that we had been having in the prior episode, talking about all of the loss that she had gone through. And so we were like, okay, she's basically on her own team now. So she's going to have to make a strategic alliance if she wants to, overcome and win. But what does that really entail? Because she spent all this time running away from Erewhon. Is this a true alliance type of thing? So she is having conversations with Erewhon, trying to align herself there, but we know that she probably has her own plans. And she also has plans for Dorian, probably too, is like what you get the sense of. She's just trying to manipulate him.
Mm-hmm.
But while Dorian is in Morath, he comes upon a room that makes him feel sick, and it makes him feel very unsettled. And we come to find that that is Erewhon's actual tomb, where he's kept, where the collars are kept. And that's where Maeve basically calls Dorian out and is like, oh, I know it's you. I'm defenseless against Erewhon. One Fae remains blood oathed. And so when I'm reading that part, I'm just thinking about the owl that has been hanging around, like that we haven't really gotten a lot of information about.
Well, but we also know that there's one missing member of the cadre, Vaughn. And so I'm also thinking it could be him
Mm,
because he was
mm.
part of the cadre that was blood oath to her and he's Fae. So I don't know if the healer that she has is actually Fae, if it's like a normal human
Yeah.
like Irene and she's just enslaved her somehow. Like maybe she has like a collar or a ring or something.
So it's very unclear what her next steps are and what her and Erewhon could possibly do together. But there's some bizarre shit going on in Morath. At one point, Maeve is trying to seduce Erewhon, which is not the brother that she married or was interested in. She was interested in the biggest, baddest one, which was Orcus. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the one she married, and she married him for his
Yes.
library, so I don't think she was actually interested in him.
Yeah.
But the reason she's trying to seduce Erewhon, though, is connected to something else that happens, which is that Dorian and Maeve kind of form an alliance, and Dorian proposes marriage to Maeve and basically says you can be the queen of like the largest territory if
How do
you
you feel
help
about
me
that?
get rid of Erewhon. I mean, it's kind of that lesser of two evils kind of a thing, but also like poor Dorian if he gets stuck with her, like poor Dorian because you know he's in love with Manon. A. But B, Maeve is like a bitch.
Yeah.
So I don't want Dorian to be with Maeve. But anyway, so basically she goes to seduce Erewhon to like allow Dorian to sneak around some more and find that area where he has the word key.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I was like, oh, we're gonna get a redemption arc for Maeve.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any redeeming her.
That's what it kind of seemed like for a little bit, for a minute there. Like that we were supposed to be on Maeve's side.
Yeah, I had no idea where it was going the first time. And Dorian, I felt kind of bad for Dorian because, I mean, he did the marriage proposal thing with Manon too, and then here he is doing it again with Maeve. I'm like, okay, Dorian, is this your only tactic?
Manon proposed marriage to Dorian. Dorian didn't propose marriage. Manon did. And said something about, like, she would be willing to make that sacrifice. And he's like, "Well, I don't really want you to marry me if it's gonna be a sacrifice." Like, ugh.
Yeah, that's right.
So he basically turned down Manon by leaving, by
Mhm.
going, "Peace,
But
I'm out."
Maeve was not playing fair this whole scene. She, like, morphed into Aelin at one point with Erewhon, and then she, like, changed into Manon. I was like, "What the hell?" And he just, like, didn't even bite. Was like, "Okay, bye, thanks." Shut the door in her face, like, "Rejected. You are my brother's wife."
And poor little Dorian's watching this happen, right? And when she switched to Manon, like, everyone's like, "Ooh, yeah. Like, I like that." Kind of. Got a little excited. And Dorian's, like, in his head, like, "Stay away from Manon. Stay away from Manon." Like, he's getting all jealous. And then everyone's like, "No, I know who you are. You're my brother's wife. Go away."
Mhm. I just like how that finally explained why Manon was getting away with so much, whenever she was back under her mom and all of the other Iron Teeth clans, and when Parrington was just not really caring about some of the shortcomings that Manon and some of the decisions that she was making. Like, oh, okay, this makes sense now. So he had like a thing for this descendant of their kings or whatever.
Yeah, which is really creepy because you don't know whose descendant she is. Like, is he attracted to his, like, granddaughter or something?
Ew. Yeah.
I mean, it's Erewhon. He probably is. It's probably not above some incest.
So that's Morath in a nutshell. It's just a lot of political maneuvering, but Erewhon is still trying to get his own thing going, and same with Maeve. They're all doing it for their own selfish reasons. And then there's just Dorian trying to be a rat and play for the good side. And then we go to Orinth, and it's just the aftermath of the battle that was horribly lost. So you have Elias of the Silent Assassins comforting Ansel, who lost so many of her men in that battle. And then Darrow showing some personal growth as well in the council room. There was some like really sweet scenes between like that and Lysandra and Evangeline. And one of the funniest lines that I thought in this part of the book by Adian, because Evangeline is talking about how she threw up, and he's like, "Well, better than shitting your pants, sweetheart." There was like that line, and he's just trying to comfort her in only a way that a military commander Adian could do, and it just made me chuckle. His way with little girls.
That sounds bad, Sandra.
No, not like that, but
Yes. He was being like a sweet older brother kind of a thing. Like,
mhm. Better than
or a
shitting your
funkle.
pants. Yeah, yeah.
Um, but before, like, back in Morath, we saw the whole Morath army leave, like, disappear. So they're somewhere now. They're not in Morath anymore. And Maeve had tried to trick Erewhon, saying that she can show him his brothers, but she can't bring them over and blah, blah, blah. Tried to make herself like somebody he wants to partner with. And so that also, like, whose side is she on? Because she's proposing or like in this alliance with Dorian, but also trying to talk Erewhon into being in an alliance with her. So she's playing the field, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, she's certainly hedging her bets and then wanting to slim down the competition and then just deal with whoever remains type of thing.
And Adian and Lysandra are setting up a trap for the Morath army, which is not going to go well, I don't think, but they're trying. They're trying. And Maeve gets with Dorian, I think, and explains that she is going to set kind of a trap for Erewhon and fake showing him his brothers. And so Dorian can get into the tower to get the word key. So we're back on Maeve's on Dorian's side for the moment, at least, trying to help him get the key. And then we see him get the key, which is super sad because the key is in another girl, much like Caltaine, and they are like basically making her the lock, and they're going to put all the keys in her if they can find them, which is what they had wanted to do to Caltaine, but she had a little bit too much spirit for that. And this girl doesn't. It's driven her crazy. and she wants to die, which is hard for Dorian because he doesn't want to kill her, but he also understands her point of wanting to die and not wanting to live like that anymore. And then do you want to talk about the scene with Dorian and Maeve next, Sandra? Because it's awesome. Do
I
you
don't
remember
even
what
know what
scene it
scene.
is?
No.
Okay. So then Dorian shows us his true like poker face because he was tricking Maeve that whole time. And basically he traps her and he pieces out. Like he had been studying Maeve and her like magic, and he had been diving into her magic to where he could like learn it because as we know, Dorian's magic can pretty much do whatever he wants it to do. And so he had been diving into Maeve's magic to where he could learn how she uses it. And he uses it against her, which is fun.
I like how this is in line with who Dorian has always been since the first books, like being very studious and like spending lots of time in the library, gaining wisdom and learning about things. I like how it was very consistent with his character there.
And also, another consistency with his character is he has been working very, very hard to place his magic in key parts of Morath so that he can take it down. All of it. All the remaining bits. And so he's been placing little pieces of ice in like key parts, and then he pulls them out. And the whole thing crashes around Maeve and Erewhon.
It's like finishing what Keltane started.
Yeah, too bad the army wasn't there. And his parting words to Maeve were even better, which is that only one witch was going to be his queen.
And Tara likes
Sassy.
it. Oh, Dorian. Meanwhile, with like Kale, I mean, Nezarin and Sartak, they have been patrolling on the Rooks, and so they find out the Farian Gap has been empty. So again, this goes back to Morath's troops are on the move. Where the hell are they? Because they are not where they're supposed to be. But we pretty much knew the whole time that this was going to be an uphill battle for Aelin and crew, even with all of the allies that she's collected over the years through good favors and life debts and that sort of thing, because there's still so much that they're up against. But there are like some really good moments that needed to happen too before all of this shit just starts happening. Like Kale comes to terms with, becoming a father with Irene. And there was, okay, who was he talking to when he's talking to Adian? Like, Adian will forgive you. Like, what was that conversation about? I forget. Oh, he's talking to Gabriel. Duh.
Yeah, he's currently with Aelin and Gabriel and that crew.
Yeah. Gabriel is like the sweetest because he's congratulating them on the baby and feeling all in his feelings about being a dad and never knowing it and missing out on all this time with Adian. And then Kaol is just like, well, Adian will forgive you. And we haven't seen any sign of that because Adian has been so resentful and bitter in his interactions with Gabriel to this point. But like, I just really appreciated that moment. Parent-child relationships are really hard, and Gabriel ended up being a surprise, like, favorite side character.
Yes, especially when you don't have years to have built that relationship. It's hard.
Mm-hmm.
And we see another relationship that's not great, even though they did have years to build it. But Kale and like his crew, whatever, found Vernon. And they got a lead to come up and basically said, you get to choose what happens to him after we get the information we need. And a lead like wants him dead fast because she thinks she owes that to her dad to let his brother die fast. And Lorcan's like, fuck that shit. Dude needs to suffer. But Elite's like, no, like he needs to die fast. And then I think he said something or did something, and so they just leave him in there to starve to death, which was not a fast death.
It was kind of cruel, right? It was a bit,
Yes.
yeah, I wasn't expecting that. I feel like I would be more like an Elide in this situation where I would want revenge and stuff, but then I would just be like, oh, that's too much. That's like crossing a line type of thing.
I feel like I would be that way if it was me that they hurt. But if it were my
Hmm.
kids, I feel like I'd be like, I am skinning you alive, bitch. So I think it depends on who was the victim in the crime for me.
Does the little romantic scene between Elite and Lorcan happen after this Vernon stuff?
Yes.
This is like one of the things that irks me about this book is like got to hang with Aelin and Rowan when they were getting close and intimate and getting to know each other. And then Lorcan and Elide were teased. They're basically like talking about how far each of them has gone, and Elide's like, "Oh, I'm not a virgin. Like I've slept with someone once before and basically it wasn't anything special." And so Lorcan is just like trying to figure out how to be with her physically, and she says, "Show me everything." And then that they get together and he suspects that they're mated, but like it's a fade to black type of thing. Like we don't get to see anything. And I'm like, I want to know what everything consisted of. I,
Oh.
yeah,
Yeah,
but that's just me.
there's some sweet moments, promptly followed by very unsweet moments most of the time, which is like
Yeah.
we can't live in our happy moments in this book because they're promptly followed by like destruction
Sacrifice.
and sacrifice and like yeah. Which one of those sweet moments is the witches arrive in Orinth to help save everybody in the battle, which is very, very sweet because the wishes have been kind of like on both sides for a while, like, and out of everything. So to see them all show up and Manon show back up because she owed it to both Aelin and Dorian to help them. It was very sweet. And then we see another sweet moment because Lysandra and Adian are arguing, right? And
They argue a lot.
they do. They're funny too, though. But like Sandra, Adian's like, no, you need to go. Like, you're not going into battle today. Like, go away. Like, I don't want you in the front lines. And Lysandra's like, you let everybody else battle. And he's like, but I'm not in love with everybody else. And I'm like, Adian.
He's back.
He's still got some room
I mean,
to
okay.
grow a little bit because the things he said to her in the previous book, like, I'm still angry.
They were
Still
mean,
angry.
unnecessary things. Yes.
Yes.
But also, I really relate to Adian's desire and need to protect Lysandra because, as we have seen, Lysandra goes to bat in these battles and skirmishes. She doesn't play some bit role on the sidelines or like some support role. She is in the thick of it, getting brutalized and hurt every time. So, I mean, I can understand where Adian is coming from because with Lysandra, she's out there actually doing stuff, putting herself in a very dangerous spot to lose her life.
I can see where he's coming from, but I can also see where she's coming from. Like, and wanting to be out there and wanting to like have control over her own life because she hasn't had that in the past. But
Mhm.
also, I can see where she's coming from that she is more angry about what he did to her than what other people have done to her because she can handle the physical pain. She's had to. It's the emotional, like when she connects with somebody because she hasn't had that connection, like for them to let her down is so much worse than being punched or being bit or being whatever out on the
It's
battlefield.
expectations being broken, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like
Yeah.
trust being shattered. She doesn't let herself be seen by just anyone. And for her to open up and trust him enough to get to know her, and then for him to shit all over her,
And her past.
yeah, that's where I'd draw the line for me too. Like, I feel like you and I would have very similar reactions to
Like
Lysandra.
it's not even shitting all over her. It's the shitting all over her and her past that he knows she had no control over. It's
Hmm.
not like she chose to do half that shit, but he still like treated her like a whore.
Yeah.
And so that to me, I'm like, you knew better.
Yes, but at least that's why it felt better when he said he wasn't in love with everyone else. He was in love with her. So, I
Mhm.
mean, that was some cookie points there for him. And also, Lysander totally deserved this, but when Darrow formally recognized, what is it, Caravir, what is it called?
Mhm.
As a actual, you know, place or a state or whatever you wanna call it, the
Yeah, that
terminology
happens a little
is.
bit later because he also recognizes Evangeline as his. I'm like,
Mm.
"Oh, the little old man's getting it. He's getting it."
I know, growth. We hated him, and now he's, like, turned a corner.
But the sad scene that happens right after Lysandra, not Lysandra, Lysandra and Adian have this little chat is Adian gets stabbed by a Vogue prince. And so Lysandra's out on the battlefield doing her thing, and Adian gets hurt really bad. And she just doesn't see him for a little while. And she's like, what's going on? So that's the sad part.
Mhm.
And then the Lorcan and Elite spicy scene happens that Sandra both liked and did not like because there wasn't enough.
You can't share dialogue of a lead saying, "Show me everything," and then it just cuts scene. Like, what the fuck?
Well, you get to pick what everything was.
Sure. Sure.
It's a drive your own story. What would you have liked him to
Mhm.
do?
I do like Lorcan, though. I mean, he is far from perfect, but I think that's what makes him so interesting. I don't know. It's like the total.
I feel like every guy I've liked has had like this roller coaster thing going on because I liked Lorcan and then he was mean to Lead. And then I liked him again because he was like nice. And now he's like up here. And Adian liked him, mean to Lysandra, up again. Kale was more like, woo. And then a little bit up. It was a weird roller coaster with Kale.
Even Rowan.
Gabriel has always been up. Like he has not done anything that I didn't like. So if I'm picking a character, it's Gabriel.
It's his wisdom and age
He's my
shining
man.
through.
He's mine. I claim him.
R.I.P.
Don't say that yet. That has not happened.
Everybody understands. No, I even on a second read through, I was listening to the audiobook. I wasn't actually reading, the physical book, but I was still getting teary eyed and weepy,
Mhm.
especially.
There were a few scenes, a few deaths in this part of the book that I'm just like, I can't handle it.
Can we talk about like the first major group
We're
of
almost to that
deaths?
point. We're
Okay,
almost to
okay,
that point.
okay.
So we see Dorian come back in. So Dorian's there and Aylin's there. Well, not in Orinth, but they are like meeting up on their way to Orinth, right? And then we also see that Iskra's bull attacks Abraxos. So stupid bitch needs to die. And Petra saved him. And Petra saved him because that's the same thing that happened to Keely. Iskra's bull attacked Keely and Petra and killed Keely. And so Petra's like, no, like, I'm drawing the line. You're being a bitch. And so Petra and the Blue Bloods change sides and they start fighting with Manon and the Krakens and the 13. And then Petra kills Iskra. So finally, Chick's dead.
Long overdue, and it was the most intense scene too, because there was a hot second there I was like, oh my god, she's going to sacrifice herself to put an end to this bitch once and for all. Because I mean, it was a straight nose dive vertically, just high speed. I was like, no, no, it's happening all over again.
And so that was a very quick rundown of what happens between the witches. But now we're to the scene that Sandra really wants to talk about. So Sandra, take it away.
I just have such feelings. This is the part that hurt me the most out of everything when I first read it. And it was the 13 sacrificing themselves to save the rest for the greater good. And the scene was very cinematically done. You had flashes, little snippets of each one. So the crazy eyed, like chaotic twins, just bloodlust and like doing their thing. And then you had Astrid just like taking off her shirt, and you can see the scar of, the word unclean on her. And she's just like going at it, killing him. And so basically the 13 are trying to slash their way through before this witch can do the yielding and power up the witch tower that's going to annihilate everything in its path. So it's a race to do that. And so it's a very high stakes scene. And the part that hurt was all through the series, the witches just walk around with this pride and this chip on their shoulder, like they're so intrinsically just evil, and that's what they are at their core. And when they die, they return to darkness. And then when this happened, it wasn't that at all. It was the complete opposite. Like they went out in this brilliant burst of light to save everyone. And Manon is far off across the battlefield and beside herself because that's her family. That's who she's been with for over a century. And she couldn't do anything about it. And it hurt. I was like, no, there's no more 13.
So basically, 12 of the 13 like went through the yielding to bring down this witch tower and kill Manon's grandma in the process. And so they basically, I don't know, committed suicide, like
Mhm.
to take down the switch tower to save everybody else. And so it was a very poignant scene. And then there were some very poignant scenes afterwards with like the people coming out and laying flowers at the site and like just supporting and commemorating the sacrifice that those witches made, which is one of the things that wouldn't have happened in the past because everybody was so divided and witches weren't supposed to be here and blah, blah, blah. And so to have, you know, the Fae and the humans and the witches all together mourning the loss of witches, it brought out, you know, the camaraderie that was needed. And then it also fulfilled a part of the kind of omen or whatever you want to call it that was
Prophecy.
passed down, prophecy that was passed down through the witch lines about them never going back to the wastelands and it never producing, you know, crops or whatever to let them survive until certain things happened. And one of those was that flowers grew out of a battlefield or whatever. And them laying down the flowers, the humans laying down the flowers of Orinth on that battlefield was, you know, that sign of it. And then I know me and Sandra talked about this because, yes, the witches all said that they go into the darkness, but the 13 went to light. I attributed that to usually the witches died doing the wrong thing, doing something bad. And so they went into the darkness. But the 13 died doing something for the good of others. And so they went into the light.
It was just so
So another
sad.
like just so poignant. So many like things coming to
Manon is quite like not quite the same after the 13 sacrifice either. She's very much a shell. There's like a very heavy somberness about her after that. Very understandable. But the prophecy was like so like chilling to me because you always expect, oh, the curse is going to be broken and literal flowers are going to grow out of the ground. You don't think of it in terms of the dark. Whereas, oh, they died there and it's a memorial. Like,
yeah.
oh, but that makes such sense now.
Well, and when the curse was like this is a spoiler, but when the curse is lifted, which it does get lifted at the end, and they're explaining the pieces of the curse, and you know, you're seeing that in your head, like, oh, this happened, and this happened, and when it happened, it was just one of those scenes where I'm like, everything came together. And again, it's one of those times where, like Sandra keeps saying, like Sarah J Maas is so good at like spider webs and then bringing it all together and showing you everything that you read and how it interconnects. Because I mean, it was a very sad scene, but I didn't put that together with the curse and that being the flowers that needed to happen until that curse was lifted. And then you went through it and you're like,
It was
eh.
the same thing with like the King of Otterland's eyes, right? Because they said from
Yeah.
the very beginning he looked nothing like them. His eyes were dark. It's like she's so good at like tiny little details like that that just seem
Yeah.
random and then bringing it all together,
And then they're
which we'll get
not.
more. Yeah,
Which,
yeah.
yeah. The next scene, we find out even more because Dorian and Aelin show up together and they're talking about the lock and who's going to forge it and who's going to pay that sacrifice and all of that. And there was a vote and when it was going to happen. And there was a vote. And it's basically Aylin's gonna do it, and she's gonna do it right now. Like, she doesn't have time to, like, try and not worm her way out, but, like, figure out a different way. And then, I don't remember how this idea came out, but it was decided that if they do it together, maybe they both survive. Like, maybe each of them can give half. And so then they're gonna do it together. So they're in the process of forging this lock, Dorian and Aylin, and Dorian's dad shows up as the spirit, and he's like, "Let me do it. It's our bloodline. So let me take your part in it." And he basically sacrifices himself, his afterlife, all like of his creation to get Dorian out of it.
And this ties back into that mass prophecy storytelling as well, because all along, Aelin was hearing the queen that was promised, and
Nameless is your
nameless
price.
is the price. And then it occurs to everyone that, you know what? Dorian's father's name was never mentioned, not once in this entire series. Like, what is up with that? Is it an oversight in the writing? No, it's part of the major plot. Dorian's father is nameless. And this, I don't know, was this my second favorite part? It might have been. It was just that kind of emotional closure that Dorian needed to move on to, because he wasn't the same after having to kill his dad in an earlier book either.
And we find out that Erwin had wiped his name from history, like all of it. It's not that we just don't know, like there's some sort of curse or whatever. It's that nobody will remember his dad as a person. I mean, they might remember him as the king that like did all these things, but they will not remember him.
It was akin to Maeve making everyone in the world believe there was a third sister, right? And her ruling. And Erewhon did the same thing with Dorian's father, which we do find out, though, what his name was. And that you want to share about it. It was such a good scene.
So his name, there's only one time that even he remembered his name, and it was when he had his eldest son. And so Dorian was named after his own dad because that was the only time he remembered his actual name. And that the demon or Volg or whatever inside of him, he was able to overpower for just that second. The human inside of him was, and named Dorian.
Yeah, it was such a sweet moment. I was like, oh. And it's like very abruptly after this. So Dorian's just like, okay, so my dad is willing to pay the price here. He cared all along. Like, I share the same name with my father. And then Dorian's a little bit slower on the uptick to figure out what's going on, because Aylin always scheming. As soon as she takes Dorian's father's hand, she's just like shoving him out of this weird, like, in-between realm back through the doorway. And then it's this really cool scene. Like, you can almost visualize the magic bleeding out of them, just draining out of them. And doesn't Dorian's father eventually, like, he just disappears and like moves on?
It's very much like, and if you have not seen this movie, I apologize for this, but
Spoiler.
you should have at this point, like, or seen some spoilers, one or the other. But it was very much in my head, like, I think the Marvel movie where they all turn to ash.
Oh yeah.
Where they're all like, and Spider-Man's like, "Help me, I don't feel right."
I don't feel so good. You're all right. I don't know what's happening. I don't know. I don't want to go.
That's the vision I had in my head of Dorian's dad.
Yes. And then we're left with Aelin, who we know was just had so much power. I mean, there's a goddess in her bloodline, and so her power is still going on, being
there's
drained
multiple
and drained
goddesses
and drained.
in her bloodline.
Yeah, there's an interesting scene with all of these gods, because they're in this kind of weird locked place together, trying to figure out how they're going to get back to where they belong and all this shit. And doesn't Mala kind of betray the rest of them, because they
Mala
betray
actually
her first?
Remembers. She remembers her human life, which she's not supposed to, but she does. And she is quite feisty about what they're doing to her bloodline. And so she gives her the power of a star, I think is what it's.
a drop of it or something,
Yeah.
right?
And Aelin uses this power. Well, first, Aelin tries to make a new deal with the gods. And this new deal is that they leave Elena alone. They let her live out her eternity here with her, like,
Oh, yeah.
love. And she will keep Erewhon. Like, they don't have to take and destroy Erewhon. If they leave Elena, they can leave Erewhon too. And so they're safe. And the gods betray her.
Wasn't it primarily Deanna?
Mm-hmm.
She was
Yeah.
a little shit. Mm-hmm.
And Deanna destroyed Elena anyway. And so Mala gave her the power to seal the gate in the form of the drop of a star or whatever, because that was her daughter that was just destroyed by Deanna. And she remembered who that was to her. And she remembers what they're doing to her line. And so she basically called them out on it and gave Aelin the ability to close them in. And Aelin closes them into a hell realm. She was like, you bitches, you're going to suffer. Like, you're not just going to go, like, to enjoy your life in another earth realm or whatever. No, here you go, you bitches.
That was an incredible scene. Because
There
Mala's
were a
locked
lot
in
of
there.
incredible scenes.
I know. I'm like the whole book. I'm just like something big is
You're
happening
like, this
constantly.
is my favorite part. This is my favorite part. This is it.
Like you don't even remember until you like talking about
Yeah.
it. But I'm like Mala Firebringer. She was locked in there herself too, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
It was so fucked up because who was Elena's husband's name? Was that
Gavin.
Yes. He wants her to spend eternity with him so bad. And you have Aelin going out on a limb trying to make one last deal,
Yeah.
always doing what she can to make others happy, even if they're not alive, in this existence.
And even
then,
if they've like irritated the fuck out of her for the last 2 years.
like if they meant well and they were trying to work toward the greater good, Aelin sees that and it means something to her. But then for Deanna to just be like, nope, vamoose, dead, gone, like wiped from existence. It was so fucked up. And then it's like one of the coolest scenes in Sarah J Maas worlds to me is Aelin falling through worlds. It's just she's like just constantly falling.
Well, let's get to why she's falling, because she used all of the magic to get them out and to lock them into their little hell world that Mala gave her. She has no magic of her own, so she's like, shit, I'm stuck here. Like, I'm not dead, which is what like I was supposed to be at this point. I don't have anybody else here with me to help me, and I'm stuck here. But Rowan has been picking up on some of Elena's like strategy, and in his tattooing of her tattoos back on her back, he put some word marks in there, and he also puts them on himself. And so these word marks are trying to pull her home. And so she starts falling through worlds. And she like gets like some speed going. And there's a world where she like connects with one of the Fae in that world. And he sends out his power and slows her down. And then she lands in her world. Yes. I thought that scene was so great.
Such a cool scene. I'm glad that you enjoyed that one as well. And I remember it being so emotional because Rowan has no idea what the hell is going on. He just saw them vanish, and all he can do is feel the bond weakening by the second as she just soars through these worlds. I mean, she's seeing all kinds of worlds. Pine and snow, like a city on a curved river, and then this one with Faye. I mean, she's just like plummeting through, and he's just like, "Oh my god, I'm losing my mate and my Karanam." But Mala coming in with that little drop, makes it back. Such a cool scene. I'm glad you like that one too a lot.
And then the next scene I liked a lot too, because it was a
We're
sweet
like,
moment
we just like
between
all of them.
Alid and Aelin, where Alid gives Aelin the ring that stops her from being able to be like attacked by Volg. And Aelin at first like, no, that was meant for you. And I forgot what Alid says to her that makes her take it.
Doesn't
But
she
there's-
basically say, "My mom sacrificed her life, and
for you,
to save you. Like you're going
for you to rule, basically. And so we need you to rule." And then back in freaking Orinth for a death that like kills you, Murtaugh dies. The little old man just out trying to do his best in the world.
Was watching Evangeline. Yeah.
And
And
right before
Fleetfoot.
he goes out to the battle, Evangeline's like, "If I had a grandpa, I'd want him to be you." And I'm like, "Oh my god. I can't handle the little girl finding, like, her family and then, like, in the worst way possible, losing them." Moving right along from that scene, we see the little people show up for Aelin. And this is right at the same time that Darrow is recognizing Lysandra as the lady of whatever the C word, Caravar or whatever.
Caravir, yeah.
And then he's also recognizing Evangeline as his heir and Aelin as the true queen, right? Like
Yes.
all of these people are getting like recognized. Aelin's not there yet, but like he is saying, you know what? I understand. You guys are the one willing to sacrifice for this country. You are like this is your home. And then Aelin arrives. And the little people had helped her out, and they had brought the Lord of the North. And so she arrives in Orinth riding the Lord of the North with his antlers all ablaze. And then everybody's trying to like peace out and get into the castle because, you know, all of Morath's army is now in Orinth and they're raining bloody murder all over everybody. And so Gavriel's running with Adian, and Adian and Gavriel end up in like trying to close the doors, right? And they're losing. And Gavriel goes outside and starts attacking the people outside and gets locked out and ends up dying. So that's the death scene that affected me the most because like he was always trying to make the world a better place. And the one thing he wanted to do, which was to reconnect with his son, he didn't get to do.
Yeah, that part made me cry too. I was just like, okay, hordes of enemy army rushing to the gate, and it can't get shut. And Gabriel, of course, goes out there to shut it himself, and then they just find his body out there broken later, his golden hair. It was like all of the feelings bubbling up for Adian because just the weight of everything that he had said to Gabriel and how he treated him and all of the things that he had left unsaid just kind of
He has a lot of those moments where he's feeling bad for things he said.
yeah, he's a little, impulsive. He gets a little emotional, but I think it's only because he cares so much and he,
Mm-hmm.
it's just,
He's deep
yeah.
down a good guy. He just doesn't know how to like be that good guy with also the bad guy he has to be.
Yeah. I did think that the final showdown between Aelin and Dorian and Lysandra and Elide is there was really cool how it was done because it was very much a team effort. And again, we got to have Irene kind of front and center show why she was so important in Tower of Dawn, why they were after the healers and especially Irene Towers, because in their world where these Volg come from, the healers, the ones with that power, are called the executioners. They're the ones that deal out death, which is so cool for Irene. But there was also a phrase that Aelin was screaming in like chapter 112. She was like, up against so much and she started yelling, I am not afraid and I will kill you. And I'm like, what does that remind us of?
Sam.
It like came, full circle. Like she just carried that with her in her heart the whole time.
When she's doing that, so Aelin, after Gavriel dies, Aelin's out there by herself and nobody else knows that she's lost pretty much all of her magic. Like she has a tiny little ember left, but pretty much all of it's gone. And so she goes and she like kind of stops Erewhon and Maeve because they don't know she's out of magic. And Erewhon's like, do I really want to go against her? And she is holding Goldrum and a shield. And she has, before she lost her power, she endued them? What word am I looking for?
Oh, imbued?
Imbued, yes. I was like, embedded? No.
Kind of, yeah.
Imbued them with her magic. So they are the flames that are around her right now. And she is kind of like attacking Maeve and Erewhon to try and force them back a little bit before they realize that she does like that's all she has. And so that is what she is doing. She's basically laying down her life to do this. And the cadre are with her, the rest of them. They are out there, and Maeve is going into their minds and like showing them their deepest, darkest fears. And Aelin is getting pissed off because she's seeing Rowan and Fenris cowering and afraid. And Fenris is seeing his brother die. And Rowan is seeing him losing Aelin and things like that. And he's also seeing his ex-wife. Or well, I guess she's not really his ex-wife, but like Lyra. And she's
Yeah.
being mean to him about you're the reason, you're the like you're at fault, you're a horrible male and all of these things. And it's just not a good time for anybody. And then Erewhon disappears. Like an Ilkin or something comes and grabs him and takes him. And we see that that is actually Lysandra. And she grabbed him because and this was Elid's idea, but Elid's like, wait, I think Irene can help. She can help us. So Irene, Dorian, Lysandra, and Elid are all up on the top of like a roof, and they brought Erewhon there, and Dorian is using his magic, and Lysandra turns into like the little like white cat thing that she does. I forgot what it's
Snow
called.
leopard.
Snow leopard. And they're holding him down. One of them stabs him while Irene is using her powers to try and pull the Volg out of him.
That's right. They stabbed him with Damaris, the truth teller
Mhm.
sword, and that's how Irene pulls out Dorian's father's name, because the comment Erewhon refuses to tell him, and so because he was impaled by Damaris, Irene gets that information, and Erewhon is like, he remembered it once when he first beheld you, and
Yeah.
then that's when like the chills just came out.
Yes.
You're like, oh.
And we see that Irene is super talented. And the reason that they're wanting her is she is like the descendant. She is the one that can do this. And he was wanting to use her as a weapon instead of a healer.
Yeah, she's a descendant of Silba, right? Was Silba in that group of gods that were locked in the Hell Realm? Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
Well, I mean, they didn't specifically say that, but afterwards, everybody was saying Silba's gone. All of these gods are gone, and like naming specific gods, but we didn't actually see her in that. We just hear that every god is gone, even Silba.
It's such an interesting, like, to be a little fly in the Hell Realm, seeing all of these squabbling gods that don't belong together and just want to go home. It's such an interesting storyline to me.
And so Irene is successful in destroying Erewhon, which is great.
Another Marvel scene. He basically falls apart.
Turned into this like little worm kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because that was all the humanity left in the sky. And then we go back to Aelin, and she is now on her own with Maeve, right? Back when Dorian and Maeve were together, Dorian, part of his like messing with her magic, basically took away her ability to portal. Like he changed, like he's powerful enough that he changed her magic. Like that scene, I was like, wait, he fucking just took away part of her powers. Like that was crazy to me. But anyway, so Aelin's losing ground. Maeve has, I think, figured out that she doesn't have her powers and that she's using the weapons and whatever. And so she's got kind of a little bit of a leg up, but Aelin being Aelin gets her to come close to her and puts the ring on her. So now she can't do anything.
It's like straight poison for her, like just directly injected into the bloodstream.
It's like basically like them putting a ring on a human and they can now like control a little bit. That's kind of like what that feels like to her. She doesn't have any of her powers as a Volg. She's not able to do anything.
Yeah. It's Silba's ring. I mean, Maeve was dishing it out. Like Fenris had his face basically smashed in and was looking real rough. But Maeve finally gets what's coming to her because it was very satisfying when Fenris, teleported behind her and then just like freaking stabbed her through with Goldrin. And then
Mhm.
who was it that beheaded her? I can't remember who it was exactly. But then like they take the extra measure, take her head, and then fucking like burn her, like make sure she's completely gone. Like
Yes.
she was like triple killed. No, quadruple killed.
Yes, everyone got their
Just to make
turn
sure.
at killing Maeve. So they won. They beat Erewhon and Maeve at the same time. Woohoo! To the good guys.
Yay!
And then
And then
Falcon gets to
there's
meet his niece, Lysandra. Lysandra gets to figure out that
yes.
she had family, like real family that cared about her. And he left everything to her, and she's like, I've got everything I need, kind of a thing. It was so sweet.
I was just going to talk about like some of the Gavriel scene where they prepare his body, it's being honored and all of this stuff. Adian takes Aelin to Gavriel's tomb, body, whatever you want to call it, and she still does like the blood's oath type of thing that she can, like even in death for Gavriel to restore some of his honor that Maeve, took away.
So yeah, it's very sweet when we see Gavriel being honored in the way he should. And Aelin, like, she's like, I was going to let you do this. I just wanted to let your son do it first. So I'm going to give it to you now. And I'm like, oh.
Poor Gavriel. I just feel so bad for him. They're talking about just it ends up Lorcan is like telling her how much he cares about her and loves her, and she basically proposes to him, like beats him to it, and then she's like, oh yeah, you could be Lord Lorcan Loken. It's just like the absurdity of that name, and they're just like laughing about it, but Lorcan is like,
I'm down.
serious? Yeah, he's like, I would actually do that. I would be called Lord Lorcan Loken for you. Take your last name. And it just got a good chuckle out of me. I like what their relationship became. It started
levity.
off so it just started off so like Alita's poor broken scheming girl, and then he is just like, oh, I need to go protect Maeve, blah blah blah, I'm an a-hole, and
Just
she broke through that.
we needed a little bit of levity after everything.
Yeah,
right? Like we did. And another piece of levity that we see is so Evangeline has won Darrow over, right? She's now his person, and he loves her and all of this stuff. And we see her wink at Aelin. And the thing that Aelin had asked her to do before Aelin left was to win her kingdom back. And she handled that with like Aelin's seal of approval, because she did. She taught Darrow how to be a human and how to love again, and in doing so, won it all for everybody. So
she sugared him up.
And then we see the scene that we talked about earlier about the curse being broken and that flowers were growing in the wasteland again, and very sweet moments. And then we also see Rowan as a wedding present or whatever. He's gonna build a theater and a library in Orinth for Aelin. And Aelin's like, we don't have money. We have to rebuild. We don't have, like, we can't do that. And he's like, have you forgotten that now that Maeve isn't the queen of, what is it called?
Dornell.
The Feylands. Dornell, yeah.
Terrace, yeah.
Now that she is not the queen of Dornell, it goes back to his side of the family, and he gets all of his money back. And so he's like, I'm building you a theater and a library because those are the things that make you happy. And then she gets coronated. A coronation.
It was a good coronation scene. Like everyone is there. Everyone is doing so much better, like as much as possible. Like you still have Dorian and Manon who are struggling to come to terms with everything that they've lost, with their parents and the 13 and everything, and still trying to navigate what their relationship is, if they have a relationship, like what it's going to look like. So there's still very much a lot of grayness there, but it was so good. I love the coronation. And one of the things that was really special to me, Tera, was Kingdom of Ash has like a epilogue chapter, A Better
Mhm.
World, but like the chapter right before it ends with the sentence, "Tell me tomorrow," which was how Throne of Glass ended between Selena and Kaol when he's like, "So do you want to know what your first mission is?" She's like, "Oh, tell me tomorrow." And so that was just like Sarah J Maas coming full circle, like bringing it back to like how it began. So touching.
Well, and everybody was wondering why the little folk were helping Aelin. And
Mhm.
then they come with her crown, her second crown, because Darrow, being the sweet person that he is now, her first crown, which is the crown of Terrasen, he had to make because Otterlin like destroyed everything, right? And so he made her a crown and he put the flower that he had kept from her uncle's reign, right? And this is a flower that's supposed to bloom when peace is in Terrasen, right? And so it's the last one. It's the one that bloomed during her uncle's reign. And Darrow was very, very close with her uncle, right? He's the one who did his coronation. And I feel like they were together too. Am I making that up or like were they in a relationship?
I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised.
I
Um,
I thought I read
I
into their relationship that they were like
yeah,
together.
yeah.
But anyway, and that's why he didn't have any heirs of his own because both of them didn't have heirs because they were in a relationship together. But I could be making that up or like wishful thinking or something. But anyway, so he put that into her crown. So he gave up the last piece of his memory of his either friend or boyfriend or partner or whatever he was to him and gave it to her. And then the little folk come with Mala's crown and put it on her too. And they just like fit together.
I loved it. Mhm.
And then didn't she officially do Lysandra's like swearing in and Adian's blood oath
Mhm. She finally
during
did it.
this?
Like Avian finally got his blood oath that he'd been dreaming
And there was
about
this,
his whole life.
and then I think she also did a blood oath with Rin too, right?
Mhm.
So everybody got blood oathed. And then we get the better world, which is where Rowan is telling her that he's going to build her library and that it really is going to be a better world. There's going to be kind of like a democracy where people vote for things and you know you see Nezrin and Sartak leave, and Dorian makes an offhanded comment about, I guess I lost another captain of the guard. And she's feeling bad. He's like, no, I'd rather have another queen. And Sartak's like, Empress.
Yes.
And so you see like the queens mainly and the kings kind of going their own way, but all of them still being connected because even
Mhm.
Rolf is a king kind of in his own right. He's the leader of the Mycenaeans. And so, like, all these people that were nothing are now like kings and queens, and they're all friends because they've all been tied together so wonderfully as nothings that when they rose to power, they were still connected. I mean, Dorian was something, I guess, all the time, but like Kael wasn't, but now he's like the right hand.
Such an optimistic end to the series. I can't remember if we ever saw Holland again, like and Dorian's mom, like what happened there. And then I want to say, I feel like Knox kind of disappeared as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like he made
Yeah.
an appearance and was like doing all of these key message passing and stuff like that, getting like summoning the
Yeah.
army to where they were, but he kind of disappeared, you
I
know?
didn't notice that, but he did. And
Mm-hmm.
then we do get a little bit of a glimpse of Kale's mom again because she writes in a letter and
Yes,
she's
I
like, I
was
hope I
happy
can
for
come
him.
visit you with your like children and stuff. And his brother wants to come visit him. And his dad's just left on his own because that's what should happen to the
Yeah, he can
bastard.
be alone in his bitterness. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was good. It was a good ending. I would have liked to see Knox again now that you point that out.
It stumped
And
me
you're looking at me
for a
like I'm going to
while.
see him again.
No, I
But like
I was
this
just
is the end.
curious. Yeah, I was curious if you would have an opinion on it because it was just very abrupt. Like to have him in the beginning and then coming back for a couple books and then him being dispatched to come, get help or their army to find their
And
location
all
or
of the
whatever.
help
And he
arriving.
just, but like we don't hear from him. He's always been a really interesting character to me though, because he's always had this mystery about him anyway. Like, even his eyes, I feel like how they're described are very weird. And as we know in this series, like eyes mean something. and But yeah, I don't know. I was just curious what you thought of it. But yeah, it was like the Knox stuff, Dorian's mom and brother, and those were the only things that like really bothered me. And then everyone got a happy as could be, ever after type of thing because there's still a lot of things, especially between Dorian and Manon, that were
Well, and
in the
Lysandra
air.
and Adian.
Yeah, like they have some they have some issues to work out too. Mm-hmm.
But there was a scene where he was called Prince of Terrasen.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember how that came about. Because Darrow basically told him, you will be Prince of Terrasen. And I'm wondering if that is, or Lord of Terrasen or whatever. And I'm thinking that that's because of Lysandra is now a lady of Terrasen.
Mm-hmm.
And then them getting together. So
Mm.
it was hinted very heavily that they were fully back together. But we didn't get to see a wedding.
Is Lysander going to be in Ash River?
Well, unless they do like Lorcan and Lee, because she's the lady of the house. Like, it could
That
be Adian, Ash River, whatever the other hell his name was. And then what's Lysandra's last name? Like,
I don't know.
what is Falcon's last name? Inon or something like that? So she's Lysandra Inon?
Maybe,
Inran?
yeah.
Whatever that one was. Inran?
You just say Enron?
Yes, I did. It's something like that.
It's the 90s, y'all.
Yep. Also, like, I just wrote down Lord Lorcan Lockin because that was hilarious. And, like, I loved it.
Mr. Elid Loken.
But I hope you guys enjoyed the series or re-enjoyed the series for those who read it.
Yeah, there were a lot. I
Reread
feel
it
like there
with
were a lot
us.
of rereads. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
I enjoyed it. There was great character building. You really got invested in these characters. And my one problem is you killed off Gavriel before he could like get his ending, which I know was done for a reason of some sort. I just don't agree with that reason. So I would have liked them to get their happy ending together.
I just can't believe it's over. Like, we've spent months reading the series, talking about the series, and my favorite part of the book has to be like the fellowship between all of the characters because none of them had perfect family upbringings or anything. Like, none of them had extremely, I would say, happy childhoods. And for them to just befriend each other and slowly warm up and build trust and then sacrifice for each other, it's that found family that always gets me about the Throne of Glass series. And it is a theme that you'll see in Sarah J Maas's books. So I'm just happy, Tara, that you read this with me.
Another one of
Like,
those characters that gets mentioned but not like anything else is Vaughn. Because they mention that they have one more cadre member that they have to go find.
yeah, I can't, like, the details are so fuzzy to me. I would have to go back and, like, see.
And I don't even know that we really met Vaughn. He was just mentioned a couple of times.
Is he the bird one that turns into, like, an osprey or something?
I don't know. But he is the one that apparently all the ladies go for. Because they made a comment about, like, the ladies will love it if he's here.
You know what? How you said that, it makes me think of like Magic Mike or some shit. Just like this gang of like the cadre is just this group of guys that just they're all like sculpted and tall and just so.
I mean, I can get behind that, except for the one dude that's like the like, what's his name in that movie? Like the caveman one.
Oh no!
Like, I can't get behind that dude. I'm sorry. But, like, Fenris would be, like, what's his name? Matthew Bomber or whatever his name is? That's the, like, Ken and Barbie dude in it that sings.
Like what? Who the hell
That,
are you talking about?
like, proposes. He's, like, it's in the movie, okay? I'm not, like, he's the, like, really, he was on White Collar, too. Really attractive.
I'll have to
like,
look it up.
Yuppie. Yeah, yuppie kind of thing. Yeah. Okay, anyway. Now I'm trying to, like, put characters to characters here.
Tara's
We should
making a
probably
movie in her
end
head.
this before I, like, go crazy on putting characters to characters.
I would be remiss if I didn't thank all the other people who read the book with us, whether it was second, third time, more, first time. Thank you so much for doing the Throne of Glass read along with us. And, Michael, Vanessa, you both were steadfast supporting the show and watching along and listening and reading with us. And the comments, I lived for your comments every single week. And I know Tera did too.
I loved them. And I'm going to point out that I cleaned up behind me right before we started filming. And I noticed that I have another shoe behind me halfway through filming that I missed because I guess I didn't think that you would be able to see it. So that's for you, Michael. It was not intentional, but there's you another little shoe. And that's actually mine instead of my kids. So woohoo. It's a family trait, apparently.
But thank you so much for watching and listening. And we hope you enjoyed the chatter behind the Throne of Glass series. And I'm expecting probably, I don't know, in the next couple weeks or so, Tera and I will be back for a fun little announcement episode-ish, something light to talk about. So stay tuned for that. We'll be sure to...
I am going to convince Sandra to play Fuck, Marry, Kill. This is a goal of mine, just like her making me read this book series was a goal of hers. It is going to happen at some point, guys.
Yes, we're going to figure out what this looks like. We're keeping this PG, damn it. Well, actually, we're already past that.
I was about to say, I just said Fuck, Marry, Kill. That's not PG. So, in the last 30 seconds, we have not been PG.
Even every episode, I'm just like, you know what? Scratch that. Never mind. Yeah.
I mean, the books aren't PG.
No. So, just wait. Yeah, just wait. Anyway, we have been going on too much now. So if you haven't subscribed to the podcast or rated us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, please, if you enjoyed, go ahead and do that. And thank you so much for listening, and tune in a couple weeks. Bye.